All right, good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me and you can all see the screen right now. Welcome to day 20 of the Rankin Technical College online AWD1000 Web Development Technologies class for the fall 2023 semester. Today, as it says in the email I sent out earlier today, the plan is to go through chapters 11 and 12 of our textbook. So I'll go through chapter 11, then do the Halloween exercise, then go through chapter 12, and again do the Halloween exercise. All right. You'll be responsible, as it says, for creating, and actually this is wrong. I thought there were 19 chapters. There's only 18. But any of the written tests for the rest of the book, you'll be responsible for doing and turning in, and any of the rest of the Halloween exercises. We're not going to go over any more of the shape ups. You can do those if you want, but you're not responsible for those. Tomorrow, the plan is to go over chapters 13 through 15. I know that sounds like a lot, but literally chapter 14 is about 10 pages long, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. And again, we'll go through the associated Halloween exercises. All right, we'll see where we are then as far as what we do for the rest of the week. Now, I've decided to take your chapters 11 through 18, not 19, sorry, that's a mistake, but your written exercises and the Halloween store examples and not make them due until the 8th. So they're not due this coming Sunday, they'll be due the Sunday after that. What that means is you literally won't have any tests this week. You literally won't have any homework that's due this week. All right. So if for some reason you are behind, hopefully that'll give you a chance to catch up. Okay. So with all that said, let's jump into the book here. And as we take a look, we're now into section 3 of the book. And again, the plan today is to do 11 and 12. The plan tomorrow is to do 13, 14, and 15. All right. If we can keep to that schedule, then on Wednesday, we'll do 16, 17, and 18. All right. That will finish up this textbook. All right. Next week, just so you know, and we may even start it on Thursday, I don't know. But next week, we're going to be going over Bootstrap, which is kind of a supercharged CSS. We're going to be spending at least a week on that, and then we're going to go into the other book. And for the rest of the semester, we'll be talking about JavaScript. All right. So just so you have some kind of an idea of where we are, where we're going, etc. So this is chapter 11, and what you're going to find is some of the stuff in here, of course, will be new. Some of the stuff that's in here we have talked about already. All right. So basic skills for working with images. We've looked at this already as far as how you can resize images, etc., how to float images. Talked about a lot of that. Other skills for working with images. We have not talked about rollovers. We have not talked about the figure and fig caption elements, nor have we talked about image maps. So those will be new. All right. Providing images of various sizes. Again, we'll talk, some of that we've discussed, most of it we have not, but we'll also say a few things about scalable vector graphics. Talk about how to get the images and icons you need, and then just a little bit in the end with fonts. Now with fonts, we've talked a little bit about this already. I showed you Google Fonts, and Adobe Web Fonts is just, it's like Google Fonts, but it's Adobe's version of that. All right, so that's what we've got to look forward to in this chapter. Now, the first thing they talk about in here, if you look at the table here that is on page 365, are the basic image types that you will see, the basic image types that you will use. All right, and as we look at this, and you'll notice if you look at it right from the top, JPEGs, they allow you to represent millions of colors. All right. And they're used typically for complex images, for example, photographs. All right. They lose information when they're compressed, and they don't support transparency. We'll talk about transparency just a little bit later on this page. But as far as losing information when they're compressed, when you make them smaller, some of the coloring might end up going away, for lack of better words. That's what they're saying. GIFs are for very simple things. Things like logos that have maybe a color and some lettering or something on them. Notice they only support 256 colors, and they do support transparency. Ping, as it says, Ping was supposed to be, when it came out, it was supposed to be kind of a cross between JPEGs and GIFs. In other words, it was supposed to hold kind of the best of both, for lack of better words. So as you can see, it supports millions of colors and it supports transparency. All right. WebPs and AVIFs are new to the game, especially WebPs. WebPs that you see right there, as it says, they're a newer format developed by Google. All right. And I'm not going to read them. You can read the stuff that's in there. All right. And most of the stuff that we tend to deal with, all right, on a day-to-day basis, if you go out to Google Images or you go out to unsplash.com or pexels.com, more often than not, what you're going to see is a lot of JPEGs. All right. Seeing more and more WebP as we go on. And just so you know, too, there are all sorts of free online tools. So for instance, if you had a WebP graphic that you wanted to resave and you wanted to resave it as a JPEG or a PNG, there's typically a lot of free online tools that you can use to do that. All right. AVIFs I have not worked with. Notice they support up to 68 billion colors. All right. When it says lossless and lossy formats, that all goes back to when you save things at different sizes. If something is lossy, that means that a lot of the color may change. You know, it may end up looking more gray the smaller that you make it. If it's lossless, that doesn't happen. All right. And transparency, I think it's, yeah, there it is right here. All right. Or maybe it's on the next page, but we're going to see transparency. All right. So again, typical JPEGs are going to be photographs. Not always, but typically. Typical GIFs will be very simplistic. All right. I'm not going to go through this because I think we've covered it already. I don't know. I have not looked at your written test, so I don't know if they ask you what JPEG stands for, GIF, etc. But they're all right there on page 365 if you do need them. All right. Including an image on a page, we've talked somewhat about this already, that at a minimum, you should always have associated with an image file a source, which is the actual file itself, and an alt tag. Now, it used to be that the alt tag was optional. It is considered required today. About the only time that you don't use an alt tag, all right, that I've seen it on sites where people don't use an alt tag, is if, for instance, you've got some kind of a very, very simplistic graphic someplace, not a logo or anything, but some real simple graphic that might be on a web page that really it doesn't matter if people see it or not. Then people either tend to not have an alt tag or just say alt equals double quote, double quote. All right. We've talked about the height and the width before, and I've mentioned that really the height and the width, if you are going to handle those, they should be handled in CSS. You should not put the height and the width in your actual HTML file. All right. So it's not that you can't do this, but the recommendation is that you don't do it. All right. So as it says, they're showing you a couple images. You'll notice when they do show the first one again, they have put the height and the width right into the HTML, and in the second one, they put it in the CSS. All right. So again, take a quick look on here, but I don't think there is anything that we have not talked about already. All right. Now, I believe I'm going to show you something very quickly, and I believe I've shown you this before, but just in case I have not, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly just go out to images.google.com, and it doesn't matter what we look up here. All right. I'll just put in dogs. All right. And here is an image of a dog right there. So I'm going to, and you'll notice it's saving it as a JPEG, and it just calls it download.jpg. So I'm going to change it to dog.jpg, and I'm going to save that to my desktop. Now, there it is. If I take my mouse and put it over it, it usually will show the size. So you can see it's 194 by 259. Now, you may or may not know this, but if I right mouse click on this and I choose open with, and I choose paint, that brings it up. So that's the size of it right now. I can go in and resize it. You don't want to go and click over here and resize it like that. But what you'll want to do is click the resize button here in Paint. Now, if you want it to maintain what's called its aspect ratio, you keep this checked. So let's say I wanted this to be double what it is. All right. Then I would go over to pixels here, and I would change this from 194. Let's say, for example, I'll make it 400. And this one automatically scales as well. All right. And I click OK, and you can see what happened. All right. You will reach a certain point where it'll start looking kind of grainier when you take a picture and try to make it bigger than it was originally. But if I go back and I resave this now, all right, so I've saved it and I'm going to quit, and I go back and look here, it will say that the size, it says that it's 194, but usually if you open it up again, it has the right size. All right. And typically when you do go in here, sorry, cancel that, and do this, it will come up eventually at least and show you the right size. All right. It's not 194 by 239 anymore. All right. That's kind of a hack, just so you know. There are also free products out there that'll allow you to work with images, and there are paid products that allow you to go out there and work with images. The best free one that I have worked with is something that's called GIMP, GIMP. All right. And as it says, photo editing, GIMP alternative, photo editing made easy. All right. It's not a terrific product. It's not a bad product. All right. But it's free. So if you ever wanted to go in and be able to manipulate more than I've just shown you, all right, with images, that would be then one way of doing it. All right. How to align images vertically. Now what we're talking about, you're going to see this on the next page, is how to align images typically with text. And as it says there, you can align the image with the top, with the middle, or the bottom of the text. What's the difference? Well, if you see right here, you'll notice there it's with the bottom of the text. There it's with the middle of the text. Sometimes, you know, if you're creating a site for yourself or for someone else, it won't matter. All right. I mean, there's not really a whole boatload of difference between the way these two things look. In fact, this one here, I'm not sure. This might even be top. All right. I don't know. But again, the point is that you can go in there and you can align images with text either bottom, at the top, or in the middle. All right. And as they say, when you do that, you will use vertical alignment. All right. And notice it says a relative or absolute value. So again, what it means is you can use the words that are in here for vertical aligning, and you can also use either points or pixels if you want absolute values, or percentages, rems, or ems if you want relative values. typically when you do it, you're going to use these. All right. As it says, if you use pixels, points, or ems, in other words, if you use relative, the image is raised if the value is positive or lowered if it's negative. All right. And we haven't talked about this really at all. All right. And we will a little bit when we get, I think probably tomorrow. But like with CSS, maybe you've seen this already when you bring up a website. Let's just pretend that what's on our screen right now is a website. And when you first bring up the website, maybe there's nothing on it, and like the name of the website or whatever slides in. It was invisible, but it slides in from the left or it slides in from the right. The reason I'm telling you that is when you work with the different values in CSS, margin, etc., you can put negative numbers in there and have something slide left or slide right or slide up or slide down. And we'll look a little bit at that at the end of this book, but we'll also look at that when we get into the JavaScript book, and especially when we get to around chapters 6, 7, and 8, something like that, when we'll be talking about jQuery. All right. Okay. Floating an image. I don't know if we really have to go over this because we have talked about it. And again, the recommendation today is to do as little floating as possible, rather to use Flexbox or to use Grid, which typically work easier. All right. And they show an example right there. All right. Now this figure and fig caption, these are something that's new with HTML5. All right. And the idea behind a fig attribute and a fig caption attribute is they are both semantic elements. All right. So if we look in here, here's our article, and you see what's different. Figure. So the image is inside of figure tags. And after the image is what? It's a fig caption. So Scott Sampson and friend is what you see right there. All right. Could this have been done just using either a paragraph tag or an H2, H3 or whatever? Of course. You could even go in and use CSS and do the underlining, etc., if you wanted to do that. But again, the idea behind HTML5 is you've got a lot of these semantic tags, and you should use them whenever possible because it really helps, all right, especially again for people who have some kind of an impairment, whether it is audio, visual, etc. The more that you can use these HTML5 semantic elements, the better it's considered. All right. Now the caption there is on the bottom. You could also put it at the top. It's no biggie. And you'll notice they also came in here and they did some CSS work with it. So as it says, you can use it as the container. And I've even seen it used for other things like they mentioned right here. Sometimes you'll see that the fig caption is used to hold a table. I've never done that. I've never seen the reason for that. But I guess that it is possible to do it if you want. And if you say, well, what about tables? That's chapter 12 that we'll go through a little later today. All right. And then as mentioned there, the fig caption element can be used within a figure to provide a caption. As it says, it's optional. You can put it anywhere, above, below, or even on a side if you want to do that. By default, as it says, it's an inline element, so you might need to change that. And you can see in here, that's what they did. They said display at block. All right. Now, what they're going to show you here on the next page or two is how to do an image rollover. Now, what I'm going to tell you right now is there are many ways of doing image rollovers. The way they're going to show you here is about the most simplistic way of doing a rollover that you could imagine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing it the way they show it. There is nothing wrong with doing it that way. All right. But again, I would say it is probably the most simplistic way of doing it. And what is it? Well, you come in here, and if you look right here, all right, it says you've got an image. If you hover over that image, you're telling it to change it to another image. All you're doing, literally. So it'll show, for example, this image, but if you take your mouse and you put it over that, it'll change to another image. When you move your mouse out again, it'll go back to the original image. All right. Now that's one way of doing it. It's a very simple way of doing it. It works. And if that's all you want, there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing it that way. A rollover, as they mention here, is an image that changes when your mouse hovers over it. And I've even mentioned this to you before. Example of doing this is to take, like a before and after picture of someone, maybe for a weight loss product or something else, or somebody who, if it's a guy who gets a toupee or whatever, to show a before and after picture of him, kind of a thing. So as it says, one way to do this is to use background images and the hover pseudo class selector. It is not the only way of doing it. When we get to JavaScript and we talk about how to do this, you can draw your own conclusions which way is better. All right. Now, the bad thing, if you call it that about this is a true rollover, meaning if I'm there, it's one picture. If I'm there, it's another. But if I want to be able to go and put another picture there and I want it to stay, that's not going to work using this. All right. So it depends, again, exactly on what it is you're trying to do. All right. Now, the next thing that's in there is an image map, and maybe you've seen this kind of thing before. That if I come through there, and as an example, all right, if I come through there and let's just say this, we'll grab this one. All right. You've got a map of the United States right there. Okay. And if you go in, and I don't want to do this, but if you take your mouse and you click on a state, you might bring up the web page for that particular state. All right. So the idea is when you create an image map, you've got a heck of a lot of stuff in there, so to speak, that you can click on. All right. I did one a few years ago and I looked for it this weekend, but I couldn't find it. I did one of Mount Rushmore. All right. For students, I did this years ago. And if you clicked anywhere on what by Washington, it came up with georgewashington.com. It went out to that website. Same thing with Jefferson, etc. All right. Another place where this is really popular is the human body. All right. So medical students. All right. So it says there, let's see. Yeah, something like this, where you would be able to take your mouse and highlight anything that's on there and find more information. But that's the idea. All right. You've got something that typically is very generic in nature, or is something that might have a whole heck of a lot of components to it. And you want to set it up so that you're able to show those different components. Now, the example that they give in here is kind of stupid, to be honest with you. All right. And it's on there and you can click. So if you click here, you'll find out information about that book. If you click here, you'll find out information about that book. There's nothing wrong with it. All right. But when you use this, as it says here, you use a use map attribute, and there's more things to it as well. But that is saying that you're going to be creating an image map. All right. Then, as it says, you give it a name. You can give it one or more hrefs, but the key thing in there is the shape. You'll notice that there's about four, I think there's four shapes, maybe three, I don't know. There's rectangle, there's circle, and those are pretty generic. But if you want to be able to draw something, for instance, when I did that image map that I mentioned to you of Mount Rushmore, the heads of each one of the presidents were not circular. All right, they look like a human head, which isn't a perfect circle. So when I did it, I used poly, because then you can kind of draw, the way that you want the shape to look. When you do that, you typically are going to set coordinates, as it shows right there. It says 2 sets of XY coordinates are required for a rectangle for the upper left and lower right corners. All right. 3 are required, all right, if you're using a circle, and there'll be a series of them if you're using a polygon. All right. Finally, as it says there, you can use an alt tag as well. And there's much better examples. I don't know why they used that one, but they did. Maybe trying to sell their own books. I don't know. As it says here, you can use the map and area elements to define the map. The clickable areas are known as hotspots, and you are responsible, if and as necessary, for setting up the coordinates. All right. All right. How to produce images of varying viewport size. This is new. All right. They're talking in here about source set. And in English here, what they're talking about is, if you look at the example right here, what they're saying is, if the screen that you're using is 800 pixels wide or more, you will use this picture. If it's 600 to 799 pixels wide, you'll use this picture. And if it's 0 to 400 pixels wide, all right, you'll use that one. So when you look at this, it looks like almost like it did when we were setting media queries. All right, the idea is the same. All right, but this, sometimes pictures, as you make them bigger or smaller, do not scale well. So in this example, what they're saying is you'd have 3 different copies of the same picture, and literally it would change from one to the other when your screen size changed. All right. Now, again, you might say, geez, that seems like a lot of work. And you know what? It can be, especially if you've got a website that's got loads of images in it to begin with. But the more you do things like this, of course, the more professional typically you can make your site look. So if somebody is paying me big bucks, I'll go out and do that for them. All right. If it's a thing on my, and I'm putting it out on the internet to show everybody I went on vacation to Yellowstone, let's say, I probably don't care about doing something like this. All right. So they mentioned that when you use this, these are the elements that you'll use. I won't read them to you. You can see them right here. All right. And again, they show you an example up here. All right. And another example down here. Here they're being much more specific. All right. Here they just wrote it once at the bottom and gave sizes. When I've used that, I've done it more like this. Again, as it says there, image element provides for using images of different sizes depending on viewport size. Okay. All right. Scalable vector graphics. If you are one of those people, and I've mentioned this before, I typically get this every semester where somebody comes up to me and says, hey, I want to get into IT and I want to be a programmer. I don't have to know math, do I? Well, yeah, you need to know some math, of course, but to be really good with scalable vector graphics, you have to understand math. The key word in here is scalable. So the idea is they are scalable images, which means that they will automatically resize themselves based on of the screen. They work particularly well if you're using responsive web design, which is what we've been talking about. Now, they also mention here that one drawback to this is they can be hard to create unless you have a background in graphics design. That may or may not be true. All right. And what I mean by that is Years ago, not that many years ago, about 3, what we did in this program, in the AWD program, when students took their last class, which is AWD1115, all right, and that is database-driven website development 2. In that class, we used to teach mobile application design. So you'd make Android apps in there. The reason I'm telling you that is not because, well, we did that, we don't do it now, but when we were using Android, they had specific tools built into the editor that we used that would do most of the scaling and the SVG work for you. All right. So as it says, you need a background in graphics design, not necessarily. All right. All right. There is an example. Okay. So that again should scale what, regardless of the size. This is what they're talking about. All right. So why would you want to use these? As it says right there, they load faster, they work well for responsive web design, all right? And as it says, those images are recognized by Google, so they won't affect search engine optimization. What are the drawbacks? Again, if you're creating it from scratch, you need to have an idea of what you're doing. Second, as it says, for a complex image, it doesn't work very well. All right. Much of what's in this next section here, as far as how to get the images and icons you need, just makes sense. In other words, it's fairly intuitive. In other words, what I mentioned to you last week, all right, you don't want to sit there and just say, I don't want to go out here and go out, for example, to CNN.com and say, oh, wow, that's a cool image. Right mouse click on it, do a save image as, and I can grab that, just rename it, and I'll call it cnn.jpg. All right. Now, when you look here, there it is. And if I bring it up, there's the image. But I can't just take that and put it into my website. All right. Again, at a minimum, I should contact whomever owns that website and ask for permission to do that. All right. Because you're setting yourself up for potential legal implications if you don't do that. All right. And that has happened before. Get rid of a couple of these. There we go. So it says when to use an image editor. Well, notice as it says, one of the most popular is Adobe Photoshop rather, CC, currently available for a subscription as little as $10 a month. Well, I'm not going to ask you to buy anything. You don't buy anything in this class. Again, you can use GIMP that I mentioned to you before to do some of this. All right. The problem I've typically had with GIMP, and I haven't used it this year, but I've used it in years past, is sometimes it'll save something. I say, I want it this size, save it, everything's cool. I'll come back to it later, and somehow it's reverted back to its original size. And I've never been able to figure out why that it is like that, but that's happened to me in the past. So they give you some places where you can go and look for sites. You're going to see this in just a minute. Now, this is that transparency we talked about earlier. There's non-transparent, there's transparent. So in other words, we're talking about the background. So as they mentioned on the bottom of the page, if an image with transparency is displayed over a colored background, the background shows through. If an image with a transparent color is displayed over a colored background, a matte of the same color can be used as well. All right. All right. So as far as getting images, one of the things they talk about in here is this Creative Commons license. And in English, what they're saying is sometimes if you go out to a website, they'll have their Creative Commons license conditions up there. I'm not going to read any of those to you. All right. Now, If you go out to Pexels or if you go out to Unsplash, I've mentioned this to you before. They like it if you say in the alt tag, picture by so-and-so. All right. Well, you don't have to do that, but they'd like you to do that. If they forced you to give credit where credit is due, so to speak, that would be attribution. All right. And as it says there with share alike, you can distribute this based on a license that governs the original work. Usually the ones that are concerning for us, the one that is the most is non-commercial. So what that says is you can typically use images if it's on a site that you're creating, that the idea is not that you're doing it to make money. So again, if it is a student site, I'm still not saying, hey, grab those pictures that are out on the internet that belong to somebody else, put them on your website. Don't do that. I still would try to take make the effort that if I was going to go out, I would try to look and see what that company's policy is as far as the use of their images. With some companies, they don't care. They'll just tell you, oh, what's it for? Well, it's a thing for school. Just use it, not a problem. All right. It just depends. Here's some other places that you can go to. These are ones I have not mentioned. So um, I mentioned to you Pexels, and I mentioned to you um, Unsplash. There's even another one for lip. We've used lipsum.org. I think there's a Lipsum images too. I've never used it. All right. Some of these are kind of cool though, because one of those, I don't remember if it's Lipsum images or one of these, they've got like an image of the day that you can use. And it's kind of neat because if you put it out on your website, you'll have an image. And if you look at it tomorrow, you'll have a different image. All right. If that be something you'd be interested in. All right. Some of these, again, with these stock photos, you can just use them. All right. But stock photos, as it says, are typically produced in studios. Sometimes you have to purchase them. All right. Typically, I mean, I've never had a problem going out to Google Images and grabbing something from there. But again, every time I've ever done anything, and I've created sites for friends and for businesses, I always use their pictures. All right. I don't go out and grab something from Google Images or anything else. And you might have heard, again, there are all sorts of horror stories. All right. I mean, there was a thing, and you may have heard me say this, make it real short and sweet. Um, this was quite a few years ago now. I think it was outside of Phoenix. There was a guy with a dry cleaner shop, and his last name literally was McDonald. And what he did was on his sign for the outside, he made it red and he put arches on it. And they said, like, within 2 days, he got a cease and desist letter from the McDonald's school, the hamburger place, whatever you want to call it. So stuff like that happens. All right. The idea is if you have any thought whatsoever, geez, I wonder if this is legal or not, assume it's not. Look it up. And if you're doing something professionally, you know, even if you're working for a company or whatever, talk to their legal department, see whether or not it's legal or not legal. All right, icons and favicons we have looked at before. All right, as it says, there are some websites that you can use. We've worked already with Font Awesome. What you'll notice next week when we get into working with Bootstrap 5, Bootstrap 5 has their own icons. You can still use Font Awesome, but you can also use the ones that come with Bootstrap. And as it says here, there are other ones. Also, if I grabbed my picture, so if I go out to images.google right now and I grab my picture, I use the one I showed you last week when we did when we went through and we did the electronic portfolio. All right. There are generators that you can use, and I've used these before. All right, where I say, free, I always start it with free online favicon generator. All right. And favicon.io, look at that, completely free. So if I go out there and click that, it says, well, what do you want? All right. And you can go out and you can basically set it up any way you want. So if I've got a ping of me, for example, I can click on that. It'll come in eventually. It'll ask me, this isn't the one I've used, but it'll come in there and it'll ask me to put a file in here. And once I do that, boom, you click download and it will create it for you. All right. Usually it'll save it to your downloads folder. All right. And boom, then you've got your favicon. All right. We've talked a little bit about favicons before. They mentioned a couple more plugins that are in here. And usually there's not a debate, but what some people do is they take the favicon as they show right here and they put it into their images folder. Other people say no, it should be just right in where your HTML documents are. It really and truly doesn't matter. All right. So as they say on the bottom here, typically a favicon is, it says 16 pixels wide and tall, so it's 16 by 16. That's the size of the favicons that you see up on top where I'm putting my mouse right now. That's usually 16 by 16. All right. Finally, fonts. And again, we've talked about some of this stuff. All right. So we've talked, for example, about Google fonts. And the big thing with working with different fonts, all right, is the fact that, let's face it, on anyone's machine, you probably only have by default a limited number of fonts. You might have 5, you might have 15, it doesn't matter. But sometimes going out to a place like Google Fonts or Adobe Fonts, you can find a very unique looking font that you probably see not very often. All right, that you might decide that you want to go in and put in for your website. Now they talk in here about copying fonts over. To me, that's just a lot of work. All right. So I'm not going to do it that way. I am going to do what I just told you. Use Google or Adobe web fonts. Excuse me. And I use Google. All right. You may have noticed this. You may not have. The other day when we went out to fonts.google.com. But if you go out here and you decide, so let's say I want to use Roboto is a very popular one. All right. So if I decide I want to use Roboto and I come out here and I go, let's see what's in here. Well, this is the only one. Let's just say I want. So I click on that one. All right. And I go in and I say to download it. Okay. You can do that. And you can actually download the font if that's what you want to do. Or you can choose just the ones you want. And you'll notice in here, they will show you 2 ways that you can add it to your CSS. The first is link, and we've already talked about that. You can go in and highlight all that stuff and put it in there. You'd put it in your head section. All right. The other way of doing it is to use an add import. And with the add import, now they show it in the style in here, but a lot of times what people do is right at the beginning of their CSS file, they put the add import statement in. So there's multiple ways that you can bring this stuff in. All right. All right. Now, as it says there, Google right now has more than 1,000. Well, that's when this thing came out. I think the latest number when we looked before, I don't remember what it was, but I thought it was about, I don't know, 1,532 or something like that. So there's a lot to choose from. All right, when you start going in and taking a look in there. Adobe, as it says, has 300. If you use the Adobe Creative Cloud, which you pay for, there's 2,000 additional fonts. All right. And that's it for the chapter. All right. So let's start. I've got 8:49 for my time. Let's go for about 10 minutes and let's start on the end of chapter exercise here for chapter 11 that we're on right now. So first, let me do this. Let me just move up to chapter 12, and that's what we're going to work on. All right. But I'm going to come in here and I'm going to come in and take a look at what we have here. So this is what we're supposed to do for chapter 11. All right. In this exercise, you'll create a product page. All right. That uses a variety of features for working with images. When you're through with it, it should look like this. Now, just so you know, the way that you get to this product page, if you remember from a previous chapter, we had our picture of our cat, and down underneath the cat was a hyperlink that said like something like 20-inch deranged cat or just deranged cat. Now, when you click on that, this is what should come up. All right. So the idea is eventually you could put as many products on a page as you wanted to, or have multiple product pages. So the idea is this is what we want to get when we get done with this one. This is what we want to have. Now, I don't believe the flying bats, the ugly rat, and the mini strobe light, I don't believe these are functional. These are URLs, but I don't think they're functional. So let's take a quick look. And we've got 2 pages, it looks like, yep, 2 pages of specifications here. So let's start. To create the product page, we will copy the index file that we worked on in an earlier chapter and rename it cat.html. Okay, all right. Then, as it says, you can delete the content from the section, modify the URLs, and add the content shown above. All right, this stuff. Well, we'll look and see if some of that stuff already exists for us. Create a new style sheet named product.css for the product page. Copy the styles you need from the main CSS file to this style sheet. Then modify the link element for the style sheet in cat.html so it points to the correct sheet. Well, that isn't hard. Next, modify the horizontal navigation menu so that it indicates no page is current. So I think we had a class equal current, we would just remove that. In the section, float the image to the left of the text, so they're still using floats. In addition, set the left margin for the text, so if the product description is longer, the text won't flow below the image. All right. Assign an ID to the left sidebar and modify the CSS so that it refers to the sidebar by that ID. Add another sidebar with a width of 180 pixels that's floated to the right. Set the background color accordingly. So there's our sidebar on the left, I guess, and there's our one on the right. Okay. Add a heading to the right sidebar formatted as shown above. Then add an unordered list with 3 list items. And I guess that's these 3 here. Each item should include a figure with a link that includes an image and a figure caption. The images should already be out. Flyingbats.jpg, rat.jpg, and strobe1, I guess it is, .jpg. Says be sure to resize or to size the images appropriately. Format the links in the right sidebar so they display in black, whether they've been visited or not visited. If a link has the focus, they should be displayed in green. Add margins and padding so it looks like above. Add a circular image map for the pumpkin image in the header. When the image map is clicked, the home page should be displayed. So in other words, this should now become an image map. All right. Add a link element for the favicon to the head element of the HTML document. It says you'll find the favicon in the images folder. So a lot of the work that we have to do here is just, I'm not going to say it exactly like this, but it's kind of busy work. All right. So I'm just going to start. I'm just going to go for a couple minutes here. So I'm going to come in, and as we have been doing, all right, here is our homework. And the last one that I've done, chapter 9. All right, so I'm going to grab this. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard and paste it in. And I'm going to change that from chapter 9 copy to chapter 10. All right, so right now, the chapter 9 and the chapter 10 are identical to one another. Okay, then it says that we should take the index file, make a copy of it, and we should call this, I believe, double check. Oops. cat.html. All right. All right. Then we're told to open it up. So let's open up the whole thing in code. All right. Let's come over to cat.html that's here. And it says we should remove basically everything that's in our section here. All right, so that's been removed. So I copied the index file and I renamed it cat.html. I deleted the content from the section. Okay, it says my URLs on the page and add the content shown above. We also want a new style sheet named product.css. And we can do that by copying in the main.css file style sheet. All right, so let's do that. All right, so under our styles, there's main. I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste. And there's main copy. And we're told that we should call this, sorry, it's been a long morning already. And we want to call this product.css. Okay, now we're going to be modifying this, of course. And in our cat.html file, we want to modify this. And we don't want to use, and I don't think we're using styles main RWD in here. I think this is supposed to be product. All right, so that's what we've got done so far. All right, then coming back into here. All right, we copied the index file. We renamed it cat. We deleted the content from the section. We modified the URL. We created a new style sheet. And we copied everything in from main.css. We actually used main RWD. All right, then we modified the link element. All right, for the style sheet in the cat.html file, so it pointed to the right one. All right, so we're up to right here. All right, I've got 8:58 and I don't know how long this is going to take. So let's take a break. Let's take 12 minutes, please. And I want us to come back at 9:10. We're going to do this one. When we get done, we're going to jump right into chapter 12. So I'll see you in 12 minutes. All right, it is 9:10, so I'm going to continue. A couple things. The first thing I want to do is I want to save this file. This is the cat file. So I'm going to save it. In fact, I'll do a save all. I'm going to close this file and I'll show you why right now. I'm going to come back to here where I've got everything. And first thing to notice is I should have named this chapter 11, but I named it chapter 10. So I'm going to change that right away. See, it may not let me do it because the file is open inside of code. So I'm going to close it in code and try it again. There, now I've renamed it 11. It's not a big thing one way or the other. All right, but it should be correct. The other thing is that cat thing, I believe, was supposed to go inside of products. So I'm going to physically move it inside of products. Okay, so now in products, I've got this. Plus, we're going to create another one in just a minute that is going to be called props.html. So I'm going to take this file and I'm going to copy it and paste it and put in there props.html. Now, I may have done that too quickly. So let's go over everything I just did. Okay. The first thing I did was I saved the cat.html file. Then I totally closed code so I could rename this chapter 11 so it's got the right name. Then I went back in and without being in code, went back in and physically moved the cat.html from where it was right underneath the main folder into the products folder. And there's multiple ways you can do that. So the cat.html is now in products. In addition, I made a copy of cat.html and called it props.html. All right. And if you're saying like, well, why did you even do that? That's going to be this one right here that right now doesn't do too much, as you can see. All right. And this right here, again, sort of starting to do something, but not really what we want it to do. So we're going to write this one and this one right now. They're very similar. There's not a boatload that we have to do in there, but there's some stuff. So let me open 11 up again inside of code. And we're going to start by bringing up the inside of products. We're going to start by bringing up the cat.html file. Okay. All right. Now, hopefully by now you all realize this. I'm going to close this, but we're inside of a subfolder now. So for the normalized, the product, and the slick nav, these must now all change to ... And you'll notice it finds then styles. All right, so this one has to also be ... and this one has to be ... Those have to change. All right. And if we want to, we can also come in here and do this one, ... So I've changed line 7, line 8, line 9, and line 11. Prefaced all of them with a ... All right, because we are in a subfolder right now. All right, otherwise it wouldn't recognize those files. That's why it looked so funky just a minute ago. All right. We do not have to change line 10 because line 10 is an absolute URL. It's telling us to go out to the internet and find that. And we don't want to do that right now anyway, but I'm just saying. All right, so we don't have to change that. So taking this from the top, okay, if we look in here, all of our head stuff should now be gone. So let's go into our body and let's start with the header. All right, now we've got this images, pumpkin, etc., all that other stuff. All right, but what we were told, hopefully you remember this from a few minutes ago, is we're supposed to go in here and we are supposed to make this into one of those user maps. All right, so that's what we're supposed to do with the pumpkin. All right, so now again, we're not accessing it correctly. It's got to be ... and you see images right away. So that part is fixed. So it now will see this. All right, but let's come down here and let's add a few things. I don't know if we're going to need a width, and this is bad practice, but I'm going to put it back in there anyway as width equal 85. We had that from before. And now I'm going to say use map equal, and this is going to be that map that we're going to create. We can call it whatever we want, but since we're working with a pumpkin, to me that made sense, all right, to do it like that with a pumpkin. All right, now inside, we're going to have to put in our map. All right, so we're going to have to put our map in right here. And again, the name is going to be equal to pumpkin. And you'll notice as soon as we do that, boom, there's our closing map tag. All right, so this says, okay, what do we want to do here? Well, remember, whenever we click this, regardless of what page we're on, we want to go back to the home page. So area href equals, but we can't say index.html. It's ... index. .html because again, we're in a subpage. Alt will be equal to pumpkin. All right, we can put a title on here. You might remember this from quite a few chapters ago, which what that means is if you put your mouse there, it brings up a little tooltip. So I'll say title equal pumpkin. All right. And now we have to say the shape. Well, the pumpkin's a circle. So shape equals circle. All right. And we have to give it coordinates. I'm putting this out over multiple lines so you can see everything. Even if I had word wrap turned on, I just want you to see exactly what I'm doing whenever I do it. All right, so that's everything. One thing I forgot is for that use map that we did up here, we want to give that an ID. Please add the pound sign right there. So later we're going to be able to do a little bit of formatting on it. So right now, if we brought it up, it's not really going to look any different. All right, but we have started setting it up. The rest of the stuff that's in here, the Halloween store for the little goblin and all of us, that's fine. I'll leave that up there for just a second, just in case you're keying it in with me. All right. All right. And then coming down then into our nav area, I don't think we even need this mobile menu in here. I'm going to leave it. I don't think it'll hurt anything. If I find out later it does, I could always either comment it out or remove it. But you'll notice in here again, all these paths are wrong. All of these must now be ... every one of those. So I'm going to put a ... in here, copy it, and just start pasting it in. All right. And also the one for the email. So any place where I'm referring to HTML files, in other words. All right. So that will get us down to main. And you may or may not remember, but main is basically going to have an aside, then some content, then another aside. All right. Now we could go and play around with this and use Flexbox and put it in any order we wanted, etc. We're not going to do that. All right. We're just going to sit and key it in. If you remember, we came in here before and we removed everything in the section. So I'm going to come up here, right there, and I'm going to put in my first aside. And I'm going to give it an ID, and I'm going to call this sidebar A. Again, we could call it whatever we wanted to. And the other one that we create after this will be sidebar B. Okay. So in this aside, we're going to have navigation list, and we're going to have an unordered list in here. And you already know this, unordered lists are made up of LIs. All right, there's going to be 4 of them in here. So let's fill these in. I don't think we need to put the ... here. We'll find out in just a minute. What did I do wrong here? Let's see. There we go. And finally, all right, so we've set up that navigation list. Okay. And again, after this, we want our section. Our section is very small. It's going to be an H1 with a 20-inch to range cat, the image of the cat, and a couple paragraphs. So this hopefully will just take us a minute or two to do. All right, so in the section, I want to look at something. Hold on a sec. Whoops, somehow that got all screwed up. So let me look here. This is my section. Sidebar A. Okay. Section. Okay, maybe it is okay. We're going to find out in just a moment. So we've got this, then we want the image. Remember, to get to our images, it's // images / I'll give you a second to catch up on that. That's the section. And then we've got one more aside that we're putting in here, our other sidebar, and then that'll be it for this page. And if you look, I've already got all this stuff in here with this nav list. All right, so I don't need it again down here. So I'm going to remove this in just a moment. All right, so in this aside, I'm going to get rid of everything that's in there and just start the new aside, okay? And since the other one was called sidebar A, I'll call this one sidebar B. All right. And this is what's on the right-hand side. So in other words, what we're doing in here right now is we're going to make this right here. That's sidebar B. There's sidebar A. There's the content. And there is sidebar B. Okay. Right. So this is where we want to put in this unordered list with the other three products that we said these people often buy. All right. Let me move this down just a bit. All right, again, this will be in an unordered list. This unordered list will have 3 list items in it. All right, and I'm going to put them in here like this because we're going to be using the fig and the fig caption. All right, so here, fig caption, fig caption. Oh, for some reason it doesn't like that, so that's why. There we go. So we've got a fig caption. Let's put this on multiple lines so you can see everything. Get rid of that. All right, so we've got an LI, and that LI has in it a figure. There's the beginning figure. There's the ending figure. Now, for some reason, missing something in here, probably that end tag. All right, so that fixed that. So, and we're missing the ending A tag here. There we go. So all 3 of these figures are going to be set up like this. They'll all be in LIs. All right, all of them will start with an anchor link. All right, that anchor link will hold in it a picture. So it'll be a clickable image of flying bats or a rat or the strobe light. All right, we gave it an alt. And with each one of these, we gave it a figure caption. The figure caption is also going to refer to the bats.html. So I'm going to steal everything that's here and copy it to the clipboard because I'm going to do this 3 times. Try to leave it right up on top there. And then this will be the next one. All right. So the next one will be, I think it's rat1.html. And this will also be rat1. All right. And this will be 16-inch rat. And in the caption, this will be rat1. And over here, this will again be 16-inch rat. In fact, they think they called it an ugly rat. All right. So again, I want to make sure you get this. You probably do. But when we look at this, all right, we just did and the 16-inch ugly rat. All right. Now we have to do the mini strobe. So I've got these two. All right. And I'm going to come down to the last one and again paste this in and make my changes. So the href will be strobe 1. All right, this will be strobe 1. All right, this I think said mini strobe. All right. The fig caption. So this will be strobe 1. And this will say mini strobe light. Now I've got a feeling, I can run it right now and look at it, but I've got a feeling with all of these that the width is going to be wrong. And if you remember, one of the things that we were told to do in there was to adjust the width. Now we could go in and do that with our CSS, which actually would be a better idea, but let's just do it right here. So for each one of these, I'm going to say width equal 50. Like that. So I'm going to put a width equal 50 into each one of these. So there's one. There's one. And there's one. All right, now we haven't gone in and put in everything that we have to put in yet as far as CSS, but I am going to save this. And I'm going to go back out into here. There's our deranged cat. So you can see it sure isn't perfect, but it's not terrible either. That 20 I screwed up, but we'll fix that in a minute. Price, etc. That's supposed to be over here. And all of this stuff is, I believe, supposed to be over there too. But we haven't CSS in yet. All right, so that's okay. All right, so right now it's actually okay. Let's go back. And where it said 20-inch deranged cat, H1. Don't know why that would be so funky looking like that, but it was. All right, we'll go back and look at that in a moment. So that is everything that's in there for that page. All right, we will put in the CSS in just a moment. But again, I'm going to save. And now I also want to open up that props page. And remember that props page that's in there, that will be this one right here. All right. Okay. So this is props. And let's see what we have to change in here. All right. Hopefully not a whole heck of a lot. The first thing we want to do, just like before, is we want to put our // in front of all these. All right. So I'm going to put in all those. So I put in those 4, again, in lines 7, 8, and 9. All right. And also line 11. Okay. All right. Then coming down to here. I don't think the header has to change at all. All right. We're not told to do a whole heck of a lot with this page, just so you know. All right. So we've got that. We've got our mobile menu. Looks good. These, again, will all need the // in front of them, as will these, as will the email thing. All right. So there's not a lot we have to put in here, so let's just put it in. All right. So this one in the section, which is currently empty, we're going to fill this thing up, and it's going to look very similar to something we've done before. It's going to be we're going to put an H1 in, then an H2 and a couple paragraphs, an H2 and a couple paragraphs, etc. for 1, 2, 3, about five or six different, all right, for 5 or 6 different props or whatever they call these things. All right, so let's come in here. Right, and let me turn on word wrap there. Right, I'll get, and then I'm going to copy it 1, 2, 3, about 4 times. So each one of these, this is going to be our props page. We're going to have flying bats, then the deranged cat, then the 16-inch rat, then a 20-inch rat, and then a life-size skeleton. But they're all going to have this pattern. H2, paragraph, paragraph. H2, paragraph, paragraph. 5 times. So I'm going to copy this and then just do them one at a time. Hopefully what I just said made at least some sense. So that's the first 2. We got to put in 3 more. and then one more. And then finally, we're already in products, so we don't need to say product slash in front of all these. All right. And that should be everything as far as I know. And again, we haven't gone in and really done any work in. So what we want to do next then is we want to go in and work on our product.css file. All right, so I'm going to do a file and I'll do a save all just for the heck of it because I have no idea what it'll look like. So there's props. That looks pretty good. All right. And so we've got now props. We don't have costumes, but we have special FX. That works. And from our home page, we can click on our deranged cat. We've got, this is what we got to fix up now. All right. So hopefully, and like I said, I don't know why that looks so funky, but it does. Hopefully it'll work its way out in just a moment. So again, I'm going to come into the product.css file right now. Props look pretty good, so I'm going to close that. And again, this right now, for some reason, that looked weird, the 20 right there, 20-inch. Okay, I don't know why it would, but it did. All right, so I'm going to come in here and open up under my styles. I'm going to open up the product.css file. That's fine. We don't need any Z index. All right, and we don't need any Z index in here either. This looks fine for our body. For our H1, H2, H3, and paragraph tags, we're removing all of the margin and padding. That's okay. For the header, I don't know if we need this bottom border anymore, but this is all of our the gradient that we put in, and that should be okay the way that it is. All right. So we've got header image, float left, padding right. That looks okay. All right, I'm going to get rid of anything that's in here that I've commented out because we really don't need that. All right, so that was the header image. Now, again, I'm going to get rid of these. All right. So for the header H2, got the font size, etc., some shadow and a bunch of other stuff. The only thing I want in there is I'm going to leave this. And I'm going to bump it up just a little to 230. I'm going to get rid of all that. Okay. Remember, this is just for our product page, so we're making some changes to it. All right. So for the header H2, all right, font size 230%. For the header H3, font size, we'll make that 125% and get rid of that indent. But we will put in some bottom padding in here. One rem. So you can see what we've done in here so far. Okay. All right. Now our navigation menu, clear left, that looks okay. The UL list style none, position relative, that's okay. The UL LI, float left, that's okay. The UL UL, that's okay. The UL UL LI, that's okay. That's okay. That's all right. That's okay. Okay, again, you can put in the word black or you can use a #000 there. For the word white, you can use a #FFF there. Okay, either way is fine. Orange, background color gray, that's all fine. All right, I've removed this add margin thing that we had in here before. All right, now what I'm going to do is before we have those A's, I want to put in my stuff for my left sidebar. All right, so I've still got to do my left sidebar. I have to do my content area and my right sidebar. All right, so let's start with the left sidebar, which was sidebar A. All right. And again, if you'd rather, we can use relative in there too. So 160 pixels is 10 rem and 20 pixels is 1.25 rem. Okay, that's actually a little cleaner way of doing it. All right, now let me go down here. I want to see. Okay, we've got a bunch of stuff down here. Navigation list. Okay, and for some reason I put that next. So for now, at least, I'm just going to leave it the way it is. So that's sidebar A. Not too much. So next, we're going to look at the section. And again, that's where our main content is. And again, you can leave them like this or change them to rems. It really and truly does not matter. All right. Okay. Then we've got our section H1. And then we've got our image. And finally, in here, we've got our paragraph. Right? So that's our section. And the next thing that we have to do, and it's quite a bit of work to do on this, really, it's a lot of little dinky stuff, is going to be our sidebar right. And if you remember right now, that's the one that's not working at all. So hopefully after we get done with this, it will. I'm going to get rid of this font weight bold. In fact, everything with my links, I'll leave it here for now, but I don't think I'm going to need it. We'll see in a minute. All right. So this will be the right sidebar. In other words, this is sidebar B. And I'm looking over here for sidebar A. Yeah, I did put the pound sign. Good. All right, so for sidebar B, this is going to be the big thing right there, float right, to move that stuff over. We were told for these two to make them black. And we were also told for the hover and the focus to make them green. Okay, couple more. Okay, I'll let you catch back up on that. Then we've got the stuff for the footer. I don't think we need any of this anymore, but I'll leave it in there anyway. Actually, that's going to screw it up, I think. Just get rid of all that. Now, previously, we only had one aside. So we had this aside code here, but we've already covered it with our sidebar A and our sidebar B. So I'm getting rid of all of that. I don't know if the nav list has changed at all, so I'm going to have to go back and take a look at that. Remember, that was all up here. The nav menu and then the nav list. So I want to look at the navigation menu and make sure that that is okay. And then we got our footer, and then we'll take a look at it. Clear left, relative left, 0, none, display block. 0, that all looks good. That looks good. I think that's okay. Then we went down and we did our sidebar A, and then our section for our content area, and then our sidebar B. All this nav list stuff, I'll just leave it. All right. Okay, let's see. So we previously had a section in here, okay, and we previously had a regular aside in here. All right. So this sidebar B, nav list, I'm going to leave that. It gets so confusing after a while doing it like this. I'm sorry about that. I'll just leave all that there. And let's look at the footer. Change that from 75 to 90% and change nothing else. All right, let's take a look at it then. Okay, not terrible, not great. So it still needs a little bit of work. That stuff's okay. This is still screwed up, but we'll fix that. That looks good. That should be moved up. So this is how it looks. And my guess is because I left a bunch of the other junk in there. All right, that's how it's going to look. And the props, it still looks okay. We can go there now from props. We don't have the flying bats set up or the rat or this. This is all the stuff that we just did. And that looks pretty much, I think, the way that it's supposed to look. But right now, the only thing that we still have to worry about here is under the deranged cat. This has got to be moved up. So you see what it looks like right here. All right. And if I come back over to here, that's what it's supposed to look like. All right. So this has to be moved up and this has to be made smaller. I'm going to have to go in and take a look at that and see what the problem. All right. I will do that before tomorrow and we'll start with that then tomorrow to fix this up. All right. When you're doing this, believe it or not, you I'm fairly liberal with the way I'm going to grade this. In other words, if you put most of the stuff in there, you're going to get most, if not all, of the points. All right. Now, just so you know, too, as far as other things that we're going to be doing, tomorrow we're going to add a form in here. We're also going to go in and on one of these, I don't remember which one, it might be the personal. We're going to add a very short little video clip. So you'll have that in there also tomorrow. So that bugs me. I don't know what's wrong with that, but something is. All right. I'm going to save all this. All right. And then I'm going to go in because we're about to do 12. So I'm going to copy this. And that will now become chapter 12 in just a moment. All right, I'll leave that there, and then we're going to jump back into the book. So chapter 12, if you look on here, it's not even 20 pages long. It will not take us super long to go through this, but it's on how to work with tables. When many people started working as web developers, they literally did virtually everything they created were tables. You'd have a table that would hold your whole website. Inside of there, you would have a table for each page. Inside of there, you would have a table for the content. Today, that's considered very, very poor practice to do that, just so you know. All right. So it says at one time that was used for it, but now really the only reason that you should display tables is, as they mention here, for tabular type of data. That's it. All right. So we will go over the basic HTML skills for coding tables, basic CSS skills for formatting tables, and then other work for working with tables. Like I said, it's a short chapter. All right. Now, the big thing with tables, when you look at it, and this is a very busy picture, but let's look at it anyway. All right. What you see in here is a lot of different stuff. And I'm just going to break it down for you. I'm going to make a little thing off to the side here. Usually when people come in and they start making tables, they will do it in one of two ways. All right. Tables start with a table tag. Tables end with an ending table tag. All right. So that's what you're going to see in there. Now, I'm going to show you something that technically almost never you don't need. And that is, we're going to start our tables. We're going to have a T head area. That's going to be our headers. So that's what you see right here in book, year published, and sales. All right. And that will end with a slash T head. Now you might say that's fine, but if it's not mandatory, why are we even using it? I want you to get used to having a T head area because with at least some of you next semester, all right, or the semester after that for everybody, I don't know, you'll be taking the AWD 1115 class, database driven website development. And in there, you learn how to build websites, but you learn how to do that using the C# programming language with ASP.NET. In there, you must have T-heads. Now you can just kind of fake having one, but we're not going to do it like that. All right. So what do you have in your T-heads? Well, you have in here what are called T-rows. Again, what I'm trying to do here is just show you the setup. Don't worry if it makes little or no sense. All right. And then you have a T body. T head for table head, T body for table body. All right. And as you look in here, I'm going to shrink this down and I'm going to put this right up above the other one. So if we were making this thing right here, okay, this is what we do. We'd come in and first of all, you'll notice there's a border around this table. Everything is split into borders. If you don't set up a border, either right now, which is what I'm going to do, or in your CSS, if you don't do one or the other, you won't have any border whatsoever. All right. So I'm going to come in here and just say this: border equal 1. That puts a 1 pixel border around everything. All right. Then we've got our header area. You can see we've got 3 headers: book, year published, and sales. All right. So I'm going to come in here and in this TR, I'm going to put in what's called some TD tags. All right. In fact, these are TH tags, table header. All right. And what's going to be in there? Well, kind of what you probably imagine. I'm going to have 3 of these. The first one's going to say book. We can put these on the same line, make it a little easier maybe for us to read. All right. And after book, we will have year published. And after year published, we'll have sales. So that is our headers. Now you'll notice up above, we've got a caption here that says total sales by book. Should be able to put that up here. I believe we need an ending caption too. We'll find that out in a moment. All right. So we've got that stuff done. Okay. And then we come into our body. And our body is made up of, that's our table data. So these are TD tags. All right. So why am I telling you this? Because we're going to have a TD here that's going to say PHP and MySQL. Okay. And then we're going to have another TD tag here that says 2017. Then we're going to have another TD tag here, and that's going to be a $, 372,381. So hopefully what you can see here is this row right here is this row right here. All right. And I'm going to come in here and you might say, why are you even doing this? You know, you're just wasting our time. I'm hoping I'm not, but I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to paste it right below. And this is going to become JavaScript and jQuery. (2020). And the number's different here. All right, then underneath that, I'm going to add another one. And that's going to say Python programming. And finally, I'm going to add one more. All right. So that's our body. Then we're going to have a footer. All right. you'll notice that there's nothing in here, nothing in there. That's how I'm going to show that there's nothing, or try to. All right, so you see, hopefully, everything I've done in here. Okay, I'm going to grab this and just copy it to the clipboard. And then I'm going to go into, and I'm trying to do this quick. It probably doesn't seem like it, but I'm trying. So I'm going to go back to our home page in here. And in here, I'm going to make a new file. And we're going to call it table.html. Okay, and I'll do what we always do here, like this. Table. All right, now in everything we just made. All right, and I saw it didn't like something by the T foot. That looks like it's okay. That all looks like it's okay. I didn't put an ending TR tag in there. All right, so why did I do that? Not to waste your time, but I'm going to do a file, save, and I want to look at this. All right, it's pretty little, but there's what I made. So what I just tried to show you right there, and I will actually take this file and save it and put it out, I'll include it, but I wanted you to see how you create a table. So again, this was the caption. This was the T head area. This was the T body area. And this was the T foot area. Now, looking at that, there's absolutely, all right, there has been no formatting done on this. But hopefully looking at it like that, you can see what I'm talking about. All right. Now, one last thing, and then we're going to go right into the chapter. If I remove that border equal 1, all right, and we look at this again, and I refresh. All right. I don't know why it's there. So you can see what the border does. It literally puts a border all the way around everything. All right. Now, do you need that? Well, I mean, again, some people can look at this and figure out everything. Other people might have problems with it. Okay. What you may or may not notice is it looks at least like book, since this is all text, this is centered. This is left justified. This, I think, is center justified in here. All right. So again, these are all things that we can work on, and all things, if we want to, we can come in. So let me put that back in here. The border equal 1. And again, I think it looks much better like that. Now, there's a few things that are kind of weird here. All right. You'll notice everything basically has got a little box around it. And when you start making this thing really small, see, right now it's not responsive, but it can end up looking quite strange. We're going to talk about all that in just a second. All right, so let's go in and look at the chapter. So I just showed you what the caption was, what the header was, T head, what the body was, T body, what the footer was, T foot. All right, and I literally built that table by hand. All right, so as it says here, tables consist of rows and columns. The intersection of a row and a column is known as a cell. Cells with data are called data cells. All right. We've got header cells. We've got footer cells. and we've got body cells. In addition, just so you know this, all right, when you are doing this, right now, everything has got what's called a span of 1. What do I mean? If we wanted year to be on a line all by itself, and then underneath it, we wanted the word published, then what would happen is this would become basically twice the height that it is. All right. But what we'd be doing then is we'd be telling that we wanted it to span 2 different rows. So in other words, if it covered everything in here, then it would be a span of 2 rows. On the other hand, if we wanted this PHP and MySQL to be in this column and in this column, we can do a row span or a col span. You're going to see all these in here. All right, it's a short chapter, but there's a lot of stuff in it. Now, the reason that I spent the time doing that and showing you that is you will be using tables a lot in the AWD1015 class. So I thought it was important that you saw one that was built from scratch and that hopefully made some sense to you. All right. So it says figure 12.2 shows you the elements that are in here. Again, that's pretty much what I just showed you. Now, it is not mandatory in a regular HTML file for you to have a T head area, a T body area, or a T foot area. But I mentioned this for 2 reasons. Number 1 is what I said before. You will use those extensively in the AWD1115 class. Also, when you build tables the quote right way, unquote, by using things like T head, T body, and T foot, they're more semantically done. They're easier read by, for example, a browser for the blind. So it is always suggested that you write them that way. All right. So again, beginning in any table tags, tables contain rows. All right. You use rows to hold headers. You use rows to hold data. Headers are normally in a T head section. Data is normally in a T body section and can also be in a T foot section. All right. So there's what it looks like as it says with no formatting. Pretty much what I showed you. All right, but I put that border equal 1 in there. As it says, by default, the width of each column is determined automatically based on its content. So book, this is the content. Year published, this is the content. Sales, this is the content. All right, and I believe with year published, it is looking at that field, even though those are numbers in there, as though it's a string, like just a bunch of characters. That's why it's left justified. As it says, by default, the content in a TH, this right here, book, year published, and sales, is bold-faced and centered. Now it says TDs are left aligned. So I guess that's what these are left aligned, these are left aligned, and these are left aligned. I guess all of them technically are left aligned. Now, can you change that? Of course. That's why you use CSS, right? All right, so adding a header and a footer is what I showed you. Putting in the T head, the T body, and the T foot. And you'll notice from what they showed originally, this looks the same as it did before. These are semantic elements. And as it says, by using these, it makes it typically easier for you to style the table with CSS. All right. And it looks a little weird because it says you can code the T head, T body, and T foot in any sequence. And the header is always displayed first and the footer last with the body in the middle. It used to be, not very many years ago, but it used to be that when you did this, you had to put the T header first, then the T footer or T foot, then the T body last. And it wasn't that long ago, that was a requirement that you had to do it like that if you were going to use a T head, a T foot, and a T body. But now the order doesn't matter, as they say. So it says, now that you've learned how to create a table, let's talk about some of the skills. And one of the first ones you need to know is this border collapse property. And they show it, I believe, here. So it says here, this is with collapsed borders, this is without collapsed borders. So you can see when you get to a certain size, when you put in the border collapse, like they show here, there's just one line, boom, boom, as opposed to these boxes, so to speak. So rather than it looking like there's double lines, it looks like there's just a single line. I believe at least most people prefer the collapsed border look. All right, this would be the kind of thing, of course, you could always show to a prospective client. And if they said, oh, no, I like that one. Okay, you got that one. And if we look in here, again, that's the border collapse property. Notice as it says, a keyword that determines whether space exists between the borders or not. All right. Possible values are collapse and separate. So what we saw in the example we went through was separate. Border spacing, as it says, it specifies the space between cells when the borders are not collapsed. All right. And to collapse it, you do exactly what's shown here. You say for the table itself, border collapse, collapse. All right. Now you may or may not have noticed when I set up the border, I just said border equal 1, and it defaulted to 1 pixel solid black. All right. We didn't put in the collapse, but now hopefully you understand what that is. Now you can also add, if you look in here, spacing. All right. Why might you do that? Well, exactly the reason you think, and that is you can make this look, just a little bit more nice, whatever you want to call it. You can use text align and you can use vertical align. So you can see what they've done here. All right. So you can see now for the header and for the data, as it says, there's a border around all of them. There's some padding that's been added, and the text align is set to the right, which you can really see right here. All right. And for the header and the footer, they've added a background color. All right. They're really, and I guess you guys, one of you would have to tell me I'm wrong on this, but the CSS that's in here, there really isn't anything new. It's just what you're applying it against that's new. That's all. Now, another thing that you're going to see in just a bit is quite often what you have when you use tables is you create what's called zebra striping. So if I was going to have zebra striping in here, then this row would probably look as it is. This row right here, the JavaScript and jQuery might be the same background color as this, then another row in white, then again make it green. So there's a lot of ways that you can do that. So using all of the CSS that they show here results in this. Removing that border collapse would make it look like this. Okay. All right. How to use the CSS structural pseudo classes for formatting tables. These are neat things. And these don't only apply what we're looking at up here in this first table. These do not only apply to tables and table data. All right. Notice their nth child of parent. Think about how you could possibly use that. All right, or conceivably use that. Let's say that you had an unordered list. And that unordered list had 4 elements in it. And one of those 4 elements, maybe element 3, you'd want to be a different color. You could use the nth child on there. All right. Or, maybe if you knew you had some things that were negative. All right. So, using that picture that we looked at before, if you had a negative number, you might want the background to be red. You can use the nth child where you can pick out one that's in a list of elements. Or as it says, you can use the last one. There's also a first child that they don't show here. So you can grab the first thing or you can grab the last thing. All right. Then as it says, nth of type. Notice it says there, nth element of its type within a parent. So you can get as granular with this, again, as you want to or need to. Some of the values you put in there, as it says, odd and even, and that's used again a lot in that zebra striping. All right. And there's even a little bit of math, for lack of better words, that you can do in here. So they're showing it. And notice, I think that's really ugly. Okay. But it does show a purpose. They've used one background color for the T head and T foot area. And then in the T body area, they've used what's typically referred to as zebra striping in here. And you can see the way they did that when you look in here. It says T body, so your body area. Every even number 1 is going to be light yellow. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And a weird thing about using a lot of this stuff, I didn't make the rules. I've said this to you before. I'm just playing the game. And that is, with a lot of this stuff, sometimes it starts with 0 and sometimes it starts with 1. Just so you've been warned, so to speak. All right. So again, these are called the structural pseudo classes. All right, we're almost finished and we'll take another break. Other skills for working with tables. Again, you saw this a little bit in the last chapter. If you want, you can take a table and put it inside of a figure and use a figure caption. So notice they've got the square around it, etc. I've never done that. Never had a reason to do that, but I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it. Notice then when we do that, the total sales by book, it's a fig caption we're using, not the table caption that we're using, like I showed you. All right, and then they show how you'd set that up. Again, the figure element can be used as a container for anything, including tables. Now, it says, although you can use the caption element to provide a caption for the table, it's better semantically to use figure and fig caption elements. Okay, if that's what they say. All right, merging cells in a row and column. I've already talked to you about this a little bit. Here's an example right there. That's what's called a row span. Book is taking up 2 rows. Sales, the word sales, that's a col span. Sales is taking up 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. You can use row spans and column spans, row spans or column spans, or neither when you set that up. So you'll notice again, the default is 1 on both. And you span for book is 2. That's why it's set up like this. And the col span for sales is 4. And that's why it's set up like that. All right. All right, how to provide for accessibility. Let's take a quick look at this. I probably don't give accessibility its due. All right. It says here first, it's important to provide a caption for each table that summarizes what the table contains. Second, you can code the headers attribute on a TD or a TH to identify header cells. So again, you can make the TDs, the T or the T head, the T body, etc. All right. Says even if you use these attributes, though, a table can be difficult for a visually impaired person to interpret. That's why tables have changed over time. And as the author says here, try to keep your tables simple. Right? So they show in here again the caption. Okay. Notice they're getting even more granular than I did. So if you look in here with the TDs, they're giving an ID for everything in here, and they're using scope. And as you see, a keyword that tells if a cell is associated with a row or a column. This says that these three things are all associated with the same column. All right. So again, the idea is you want to make this, because if somebody is looking at your website, you've got a table in there and they're blind, they are relying 100% on their browser for the blind to be able to interpret whatever you've got on that page. So the easier that you can make it for them, the easier it'll be, when the software goes through the interpretation process. All right. And how to make a table responsive. As it says here, as you develop responsive websites, you may need to modify your tables so they work for smaller screen sizes. To do that, you can start by making the width of each table and its columns fluid. So again, in other words, you've heard this several times before. Don't use points, don't use pixels. Use percentages and rems or ems. In addition to making the table fluid, you may want to change how it's formatted for smaller screens. They're going to show that on the next page here. All right. There's the same table from over here. All right. Now, should they have done it the way they did it? I don't know. That's just the way they did it. All right. And then they show you the associated media query. And that's it. So I've got 10:35. Let's take 10 minutes. And then when we come back, we're going to do the chapter 12 Halloween exercise. All right. So please come back in 10 minutes. Thank you. All right, it is 10:45. So I have copied my chapter 11 folder to chapter 12. And the first thing we're told to do is to take this index file and literally copy it and put it inside of products. So we want an index file inside of there. All right, so that's how I'm going to start with everything. So again, let's open up the chapter 12 and we'll open it up inside of Visual Studio Code. All right, and as we get started, then I'm going to bop back and forth like I have been doing between this and the write-up here. So this is what we want to create, is this right here. All right, so it says you'll create a page that looks like this. All right, we don't have very many steps here. So to create this, copy the index that you worked on. I did that already. And delete the content from the main section and modify the URLs. I haven't done that yet. We'll do that next. Modify the horizontal navigation so it indicates the product page is the current page. So we'll want to say basically that it is equal to current. Add a table to the section with a caption, a header, and a body is shown. Be sure to merge the rows in the first column in each category so the category name is displayed only in the first row, right? Even though that widened it out a little bit. Code the description for each product as a link to the page for that product. You can use any names you want, but the pages should be stored in the products folder. The exception, of course, is for the deranged cat, which was named cat in the last chapter. Then finally, create a new style sheet named summary.css for the product page and copy everything basically from the main.css, then modify it so that it points to the correct sheet and put in there all of the stuff for the tables. In other words, as it says, align the caption, the headings, and the data, and apply any other formatting as shown above. Use a structural pseudocode, or pseudo, I should say, class selector to apply this background color to the prices in the third column. So that's these right here. All right, so let's just take it from the top then. So I have copied everything over. So now in my products folder, I have an index. All right, I'm going to close this so I've got a little bit more room to work with, and I'm immediately going to turn on word wrapping in case I need it. Looks like it might be on already. We'll see. All right. So as we need our ... and we don't even need this main anymore. We're not going to use the slick nav in here. We can leave it. It's not going to hurt anything, but I'm literally going to get rid of all this like that. And the only other one that I'm going to put in here is this summary one that we didn't create yet that we will in a minute. I'm going to put my ... in there. And this one will say summary. So the only two style sheets that we're using are the normalized one at the beginning and then this summary one. So you can see this has been cleaned up quite a bit in here. All right. Then in our body, we still want this. I don't know if we're going to need that width or not, but I'm going to put that in here. All right, the Halloween store for the Goblin and all of us, etc. All right, we won't need this navigation menu I'll leave it in there. I don't think it's going to hurt anything. All right. And then in our header, don't know how, but somehow I screwed that up. There we go. Oh, I did that. So what the heck's going on there? But something is. So header, got the image, the H2, the H3, and then let's end the header there. Again, we don't need this mobile menu in here. So go right to the nav menu right there. All right, as before, these will all need the ... in front of all of them. All right, and I think there's an email one down at the bottom here that will need it as well. All right, so far what I changed in here is I cleaned it up. We only have two style sheets. All right, the normalize and the summary, which we're going to make shortly. The header stayed the same. We got rid of the mobile menu. And for all of our links in our nav menu, we prefaced them with a ... All right. Next, we're told to remove everything again from our section. And now we're going to fill it up. All right. And actually, we're going to start here. Let's see. With an aside, and we're going to put that navigation list in there that we typically have on the side. Okay, nothing really new there. Okay, so that's the end of my nav list right there. Same kind of stuff we've been doing previously. File, save. And if I save here, I don't even know what it'll look like, but let's look. Oops. Not too much. I didn't update yet. We didn't make the summary yet. This has not been made, so I guess it looks like it's not formatted at all. All right, so we've got here ID equal nav list. What doesn't it like? There's our N for our nav. We already have a nav list. Okay, that's in the aside. So I guess I repeated that. So let's get rid of it. Only wanted it in there once. All right, now we're going to make the section. And this is where we're going to create the table. All right. And no border, no nothing. We're going to do all that in our CSS. And again, we'll have a T head. We will have a T body, and I don't think there's a T foot in here. The first two fields will be floated to the left, I believe, and the last one to the right. So that's why we've got the class equal left on these first two, and the last one will say class equal right. Okay. So that is our head section. Okay, let's do the body, which is a lot more substantial. It's got, I don't know, something like about 10 prices in there, 10 things in there. All right. But again, they will all be the same. There will be a table header. All right. And then there'll be table data and table data. In fact, they're not really all the same, but we're just going to take our time doing this. All right. It's 10:55. This will probably take till 11:30 or so to finish. Now we wanted this that's up here. This is that heading. We want that to span 5 columns. All right. It's going to be pretty wide, in other words. Then we've got a TD and a TD inside of our TR. The reason I'm telling you that is now every TR that we put in here is going to have a TD and a TD. So I'm going to copy this one and make changes to it each time. looking here, TR. I screwed that up. It's better. That is everything that is in here. Now, if I save this and we run it, it's probably going to look really terrible because, again, we don't have anything formatted yet. So there it is. So the next thing to do is to come up and create this summary thing that's in here. All right, which I don't believe I have, but I don't know if I do or not. So let's look. I was playing with it before we came back here. So styles. No, I don't. So we're supposed to just grab our main style, I think. Let's look. Copy it from main. All right, so I'm going to copy and paste. And there it is. And this is going to be called summary.css. All right. And I'm just going to start from the top. Again, we don't need any Z index. I don't think very much in here is going to change at all. All right. I think we're going to end up keeping virtually everything in here the same. There's that image, that H2. We can get rid of all this. That one rem. Hoping our navigation menu changes, not at all. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. We don't need the width. None absolute 100%. None block. Well, that's okay. Let's uncomment this. That looks okay. Current looks okay. Gray looks okay. Get rid of all this stuff. All right, here's our aside. UL, still none. Okay. That's everything for the nav list. For the section, we don't need any of this. We don't need this or this. This is now supposed to be black. Or again, pound 000, whatever you prefer. Focus, that's green. And we don't need anything in here. Because Okay, that should be everything it look like, but I'm going to give it a It didn't fix it. Okay, I skipped a line in here. Sorry. Equals left costumes. Let's make sure that's right before we go and do anything else. Well, somehow those got flipped, but I'm looking here. Figure that out, then it'll be everything. ER. There we go. All right, it looks pretty good. So let's take a look at the whole thing. That isn't working, so something's wrong with the picture of the pumpkin. So we'll look at that to begin with. Yep, I think we need a dot dot slash there. See if that brings the pumpkin picture back. And it did. Okay, so let's take this from the top so you can see everything that was in here. All right, we copied over the index file from where it was down on the bottom here into our, we now have an index.html in our products. All right. In here, we clean this up by changing our link tags so that those link tags are the only ones we're referring to are normalized.css and summary.css. All right. And we needed the dot dot slash in front of those as we did here, and that's what was screwing that up. So the header didn't change any. The nav menu didn't change any, except again, since I am inside of products, I've got to do a dot dot slash again for all those in lines 19 through 22 and lines 24 through 27 and line 30. All right. Our nav list didn't change at all. So what did change, and I'll leave this up here and go through it slowly. So what did change here was the section. That's where we've got the table. The table began, as you can see, with a caption that says product list. Then we have classes that are left or right All right, we'll look at those in just a minute, but to the left, we wanted the category and the description, and to the right, we wanted the price. Those are our three headings. So this right here is this up here, category, description, and price. All right. Then we came in and we said that we wanted the next row, the stuff that was in here, to span for props, span 5 columns. All right. And then we had our listings. So first we had the deranged cat for $39.99, then the bats, flying bats for $14.99. I don't know, were flying bats supposed to be 20 inches? No. So we don't need that 20 inches there. All right. Then we had our 16-inch ugly rat, followed by our 20-inch uglier rat. All right. And then finally, we had our plastic skeleton. Now, the reason I said finally is those were all the props up till right there. Those were all the props. All right. Then we had our 3 costumes, Austin Powers, Frankenstein, and Martian. So again, Austin Powers, we gave it a table header of costumes, row span of 3, and again, left basically. And then Powers with a price, Frankenstein with a price, Martian with a price. Next, we had our special effects, which again had a row span of 3. And that had our fog machine for $34.99, our fog juice for $9.99, our mini strobe for $14.99. Then finally, we had our last type, which were our masks. We had 2 of those. We had a Freddy mask for $44.50 and a Darth Vader mask for $124.50. All right. So it looked pretty ugly before we went in and added our CSS to it. So let's look at that. Taking that from the top, there were some changes again that had to be made. Okay, we got rid of the Z index and a few other things in here we tweaked, for lack of better words. All right. I'm going down to here. That was the same. That was the same. That was the same. So was that. And that brought us down to our navigation menu. So again, a couple things, couple minor changes in there, but it was basically the same in there as well. That got us down to our aside, which again was pretty much the same. All right. And our nav list, which again was pretty much the same. Then finally our section, and as you know, the section is where we created the table itself. All right, we changed the width, made sure it was floating right. All right, set our padding accordingly. We wanted the color of our anchor tags to be black. Okay, at first, and be black when they were visited or whether they were not yet visited. However, when we hovered over them or gave them the focus, it would be green. Finally, we did the stuff for our table. Centered the caption, made it 1.5 times its normal size, made it bold, and set up some margin. Set up some margin for all of our table headers and all of our table data. Then if it was a table header right with a class of right or a table data with a class of right, we text aligned it right and added some padding. If it was a table header left or a table data left, no padding, but we text aligned it to the left. All right. We made sure the header was vertical aligned on the top. Again, we set up the links to be black. All right. Then in our header, make it bold, and the color is that gray. Finally did some, uh, the striping that was on there, the background color, which basically meant of everything that was in there, make this color. Okay. And that's it. Now, tomorrow, mention this quickly to you. We're going to do it just a little bit differently. All right. Forms themselves are not a hard topic, but they're a very extensive topic. So, in other words, there's a lot of things to them. So, I think what we'll do tomorrow is we'll start out and I will just bring up an empty existence of, or I'll make a project and we'll put in there a single file, an index.html, and we'll put a single file and a single CSS file in there also. And we'll build a form and style it. So you can see basically how you create a form and how you style a form. Then we'll go into the chapter because by then we'll have already covered much of the material that's in here. All right. When we get done with that, we will again do the Halloween exercise at the end of the chapter. But after we get done with that, we'll go into chapter 14. As you notice, it's literally about 9 pages long. All right. It's an introduction to media on the web, and they show you different ways you can bring in audio and different ways you can bring in video. We'll do that. That literally should take about 10 minutes, and even the exercise shouldn't take very long. And then finally, when we get done with that, we'll talk a little bit about transitions, transforms, animations, and filters. All right. And transition basically is kind of where you go from one thing to the other. All right. Transforms, it allows you to do some work with shapes and the likes. Filters. The animations that they do in here are very, very elementary. There's other ways that you can do animations. We'll look at those when we get into talking about JavaScript and jQuery. All right, so that's what, what'll be online for tomorrow. And then again, we'll go into the last section and we'll do chapter 16, which are just like it says, they're guidelines. Chapter 17, what I'd like to do for 17, it's different than what's in the book. I'd like to take one of the websites we've created and actually deploy that out to the internet. All right, and see if we can do that. So, you could follow along and use one of yours if you wanted to as well. And then in chapter 18, it's our transition as we're going from HTML and CSS centric work to JavaScript and jQuery centric work. All right. So that's what we have left for the rest of the week. What I'm thinking of doing too, just so you know, and I might give you most of this code or put it out there when we get done. I think I showed you this at the beginning of the semester, but I created this a while back, did not make it responsive. So note, this is not responsive. All right, put it at 100%. There it is. So here's basically some transition as we're going from slide to slide. All right. And there is a form on here, which is what I wanted to show you. We may use that one tomorrow. Now, this form has in it both some HTML stuff for validating and some JavaScript stuff. So if I put this in here, you notice what we get. All right. And look at building something, maybe either this one or one like it tomorrow. All right. And then again, finally, last week, as I mentioned to you before, or next week rather, we will be going over Bootstrap. Okay. All right. That's really all I have. As always, if you have questions, let me know. Tonight, I plan on trying to grade as much of everything. That is your chapter 8 work, your chapter 9 work that was due yesterday by midnight, and your hot 3. I promise you I will do the best I can to get all of them done and inside Rankin updated for tomorrow morning. Again, I'll do the best I can. Until then, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good rest of the day. Thanks for those of you who stuck around.